think honestly, I kind of love doing what's not easy. So recognizing that this was a block for me, that I still had a lot of jealousy, that I was not really comfortable seeing my partner with another person, learning how to communicate these feelings, learning how to work with someone through discomfort. I saw that as the most valuable gift that I could receive, like as, again, a human trying to be in this world. There are not very many things that are difficult for me, like really, truly, like gonna make me cry in bed all day. I feel really lucky. And I came up against something that was like really throwing my head for like a spin in a washing machine. And I wanted to know why. And I wanted to be more secure in my own self so that I could continue loving and attaching to others securely.
Welcome to Normalizing Non-Monogamy, the podcast where we interview incredible people from across the entire spectrum of non-monogamy to hear their fascinating stories. We strive to bring guests on the show who have a healthy approach to non-monogamy. However, it's important to remember that everyone does it a little bit differently, and the views and opinions expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect our own.
Additionally, we produce this show for entertainment purposes only. Please be aware that we aren't doctors or therapists. Consult a medical professional for anything regarding your health that you might learn about on the show. Enjoy!
Welcome to episode 180. We're Finn and Emma, and today we have an interview with G. This is a very powerful interview, and G has explored a lot of different types of non-monogamy and different dynamics, I should say, of non-monogamy throughout their journey.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I took away from this was just how many experiences and, I guess, wisdom.
Yes.
And not to say like people who are in their mid-20s can't be wisdomists, to steal our friend's quote. But
we didn't mention that they're 25 years old.
I just did.
People in their 20s. Anyway, I flew right past your friend's joke. Sorry.
I know. It's okay. I'm used to my friend's jokes going over people's heads.
I got it. I just flew past it.
Nevertheless, thank you, G, for everything. It's an amazing discussion. We hope everybody enjoys it. This won't be the last time you hear from G either, because they're coming back with Zach from episode 141 and Leanne from episode 173, because one of G's credentials is that they were, like, we'll call it team captain of the orgy team at Yale. They took over the reins a couple years after Zach. And so, it's a super, we're looking forward to that sort of roundtable discussion. We're going to bring the three of them back and talk about like how to create safe parties, how to be inclusive, just so many different things around that.
So stay tuned. Yeah. That will be coming very soon.
I feel like you just played me off like I was at the Oscars.
Well, you're kind of rambling. So
I'm excited.
I am too, but as I was trying to wrap it up.
All right, fine. Tell them about the other exciting news that we forgot last week.
So Finn and I realized that we've just passed our 3-year podcast anniversary, podiversary, whatever you want to call it.
I would just call it a podcast anniversary.
Podcast anniversary. Yes.
So that was last week, and we missed it.
May 2nd is our anniversary, and we just completely didn't remember. We forgot. So anyway, we're super excited that can't actually believe that it's been 3 years, and we just wanted to have a huge shout out to everyone who's been on our show, who's reached out to us, who's been a Patreon member, who just supported us in any way.
Who's had us on their show. We've been on a lot of different podcasts, and anybody who's really supported the show is just, we can't believe we're still doing this every week. 3 years later. So 180 episodes plus some special ones. So we actually have like 210 episodes.
It's pretty wild. It's really wild. So and this obviously wouldn't, high five. It would not be possible without all of you. So thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And while we're talking thank yous, one goes out again, another one to the Patreon community. Huge support there. There's over 160 members. If you're looking for other non-monogamous people, or you're just interested in like meeting other open-minded people, not everybody in there's non-monogamous. It's a fantastic community. It really got us through the last year and a half.
For sure.
It's been amazing and incredible. We got some dates coming up. May 17th is the next men's group call. The women's group is going to be 2 days later on the 19th. And then our monthly video Q&A will be on May 26th. And so if you want to learn more about that, head over to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, click on the Patreon tab, and you'll see all the information about how to join and what that looks like for just a few bucks a month.
Yes, so go check that out. We also, upcoming, have
What do we got? What is it? Tell me what it is.
We also have our monthly virtual meet and greet coming up on May 20th. It's a Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern. These are open to anyone that wants to join. They're only $10. They're super fun. If you haven't checked it out, or even if you have, come back, join us on Thursday, May 20th. To sign up, go to our website, normalizingnonmonogamy.com, and click on the meet and greet tab. Again, only $10.
I got excited when you said we have a new. I was like, what do we got? I don't even know what we have.
Well, it's new for the month of May.
Sure. Whatever you got to tell yourself.
Gotta throw that in there.
All right. Last thing we just wanted to say, thank you again to everybody who's, again, supported us. I almost did your thing. Stop it.
We just keep interrupting each other.
We're not editing any of this out. So thank you again to everybody. If you don't mind, head over while you're at our website signing up for all the different things. Send us an email or send us a voicemail. Let us know how you're doing. Let us know how we're doing. We'd love to hear from everybody. If you're interested in coming on the show, please reach out. You don't have to be a team captain orgianizer in order to come on the show. You just have to be an awesome human willing to share your story.
Yes.
So we'd love to hear from you. We look forward to hearing from you. And we hope you enjoy this conversation with G.
Yeah, let's go. Well, welcome, G, to the show. We're so excited to have you here, and we're so excited for this conversation. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, we'd love for you to introduce yourself, and
because we've determined during the pre-chat that we have no idea how to do that. So yeah. We're going to let you do that, and then
we had a little bit of a confusion.
We'll come back in when it feels safe again.
Sounds good. Well, so I think part of the confusion is that I have many hats, many names. I'm Genevieve, I'm G, I'm Lady Surge in the uncensored community. My pronouns are they, them, and I am just a 25-year-old human trying to figure out what I'm doing in this world.
That's a fantastic introduction. I love it.
I love it as well. And I think, maybe it's pertinent to say that we were introduced to you by a former guest, Zach, his episode eludes me. I'm going to guess in the 140s, but Zach.
We'll have this in.
It'll be in the show notes, but
the intro too.
You and Zach have a tie back to the Yale organization. For anybody who hasn't listened to that one, that's a fantastic discussion. Go listen to the episode with Zach. But he said, well, we have to talk to G, and here we are.
Yeah, wow. So Zach is one of the OG organizers of what I love that you called it a team and a club. Technically, we were just a group of friends, but who started throwing orgies. Zach started throwing orgies with some friends, and it grew. By the time I was a senior, we had actually had sort of a kosher, student sexual culture forum organization that we had non-heteronormative discussions about relationships, all these things. And then kind of on the side, we threw basically twice a semester orgies for the campus community.
Yeah. I think that's awesome. And I think like the activism piece behind it is something that we'd love to hear more about, but maybe take us back in time to like, what was your introduction to sex positivity, non-monogamy, all of the things that have you wind up in we'll call it an orgy team because I like that the best.
I really love that. Yeah. Never called us a team before, but we totally were. Well, to go all the way back to before I had ever heard of anything to do with non-monogamy, I was a little teenage G in California, and I had a really traumatic first relationship with a lot of infidelity and just trauma wrapped around it. And so when I got to college, I had considered myself, so monogamous, like I was going to marry my high school sweetheart kind of thing. But I realized like, maybe I should try something different. That didn't really work out for me. Like, I wasn't really a fan of jealousy. I wasn't really a fan of control in terms of a romantic relationship. And so I started dating someone who was already pretty ahead of me in terms of the open relationship, which is what we called it back then.
And that was in high school?
When I first got to college. Yeah. Like the beginning of college, I started dating someone who was already pretty outgoing and emotionally and sexually, I guess, adventurous. And so this person started throwing orgies, and I was going to them because, of course, as a partner of someone who's throwing them, I'm going to be there. And a caveat, ethical non-monogamy or open relationships at first was not easy for me. I had a lot of emotional turbulence, even though intellectually I was there. And so we were long distance open. We were open on campus, and I was never really vibing. Like the first orgy I went to, I had fun. I had my first threesome, etc., with two people I just met, and it was hot. It was sexy, but I still didn't really feel secure in our relationship. That eventually I worked on and I grew into it. And part of that, I think, is because they wanted a femme person to step up into the leadership role. They usually had some men, some women, organizers. And since I was going already, and I figured, hey, I know everyone. I know what works. I know what doesn't work. Might as well step into the role. So my sophomore year or into my junior year, I started taking on one of the leadership roles of the team. And slowly over time throughout college, I was dating multiple people. I was studying abroad. I started dating someone in a long distance monogamous relationship at one point. I was part of, triads. I kind of did it all. And then towards the end of college, right after graduation, I have lived my life pretty much consistently, either like poly with a primary partner or solo poly. So like lots of lovers, continuously dating. And that's a big overview. I don't know. I threw a lot.
Yeah. And there's so many questions.
Well, I think I love like the nonchalant approach. You're just like, well, I started dating somebody and they were throwing orgies, so I just went to the orgies. It's like, oh, I started dating a swimmer and I just started going to swim meets, and like that's just and it's like I think maybe there's something there that, and you said it wasn't easy, so maybe going back to that and being like, I feel like it's not just that easy. Like, oh, well, they threw orgies, so now I go to orgies, and now I'm just a person who does orgies. Like, was it that seamless of a transition?
Okay, that's a really good point. And many years down the line, this is like, we're talking 8 years ago, right? I've pushed past my discomfort with a lot of ethical non-monogamy or just open relationships. I was always really sexually adventurous, and I come from a really supportive, open, loving household. And so I was always comfortable when I started exploring my own sexuality in college, and recently gender, like always been affirmed in any path I've set out to follow. And I think, honestly, I kind of love doing what's not easy. So recognizing that this was a block for me, that I still had a lot of jealousy, that I was not really comfortable seeing my partner with another person, learning how to communicate these feelings, learning how to work with someone through discomfort. I saw that as the most valuable gift that I could receive, like as, again, a human trying to be in this world.
Just the opportunity to, quote unquote, improve or grow.
Yeah. There are not very many things that are difficult for me, like really, truly, like gonna make me cry in bed all day. I feel really lucky. And I came up against something that was like really throwing my head for like a spin in a washing machine. And I wanted to know why. And I wanted to be more secure in my own self so that I could continue loving and attaching to others securely.
Mm-hmm.
And so how did you start to work through that? Because that's like you said, if you haven't come up against that very often, everything is sort of easy, and now you're sort of hit with a wall.
As much as I hate this answer, time is the best medicine for any dilemma. And I remember talking to friends and talking to a therapist and people saying like, it doesn't seem like you're enjoying this that much. And I was like, I am enjoying it. It's just hard for me. And I didn't let it being hard. I didn't let the fact that it was hard for me stop. I did a lot of journaling. I did a lot of crying in bed some days, like there were times where I was like undoing everything that I had learned about my own like a self-worth in terms of like how people treat me in society, in terms of what I'm capable of doing. And then to take it back to like today in terms of how I see my whole life, I don't really prioritize romantic relationships as much in terms of relationship anarchy. Like I love people. I'm going to continue loving people whether or not I see them every day or not. And so just because I have one friend doesn't mean I can't have like 10 friends, right? And so I translated that to relationships. Like, okay, I can love this one person. I still love that person. I have to find a way to come to terms with the fact that I'm always going to love all these people.
Right. And during that time, you said you did a lot of journaling, you talked to people. Like for other people who are maybe going through that, do you have any thoughts to how, I guess, advice or tips on how to work through some of those really difficult things?
Yeah. So number one, I would say find someone with more experience than you. Find resources such as this podcast. I had a lot of mentors, Zach being one of them, who you see them down the road living this life that is beautiful and you aspire to, a very freely loving life, and learning about their process and just kind of taking in how they engage with their loved ones. And you can learn what you don't want to do from them as well. Like maybe that doesn't work for me. All right. I need a nest partner. Actually, I never want to live with anyone. Like things like that once you get further down the road. But at first, I'd say the biggest thing is if you're interested in non-monogamy, you need to be on the same page as your partner. But to be on the same page as your partner, you need to be on the same page as yourself. So like figure out what you want. And that might involve, again, trying lots of different things and figuring out this doesn't work for me. I had a partner who I was trying to open our relationship with, and they were just really unhappy in an open relationship. And I had to eventually just say, hey, this is something that's really important to me. And I don't think that it's what's right for you right now. Like we can push through it and it might get easier, but if you're not enjoying yourself, then this relationship isn't going to work out. And so,
yeah.
Yeah. And I think maybe expanding just on what you said, like you need to be on the same page as yourself, and then you kind of said it like, that doesn't mean don't do a single thing until you know exactly who you are and exactly what you want, because that's going to be an ever moving,
changing.
Yeah. That's going to be always in flux. And so it's a lot of trial, error, tweaking, growing, figuring yourself out along the way. And it is scary. It's hard.
Hence the time. You need to make a lot of mistakes.
Yes.
Yeah.
You do. That's a really good point too. Like, don't be afraid to make mistakes because that's how you learn. That's how you grow. Yeah.
I think maybe though on the piece of time, like somebody listening that's maybe in their 40s, 50s, 60s starting to try this, and you're like, well, I'm 25 and I like seemingly have it all figured out. Do you feel that way?
Whew, no.
Good. That's what I wanted to hear.
Yeah, it's like if I ever think I have it all figured out, please stage an intervention. I have a lot more figured out than I did, and that's always going to be the case. Like, you're always going to be growing and always learning.
What are some of the things you've learned about yourself, or the ways that you've grown and changed over the last, let's call it 5-ish years or so, maybe 6 years?
It's a great question. I'd say that I have grown a lot better at prioritizing my own needs. I think in the past, my attachment style has been on the spectrum towards anxious. And, I really love providing love for people, and I love making people feel good. But I have to recognize that, like, I can't derive all my own pleasure from that pleasure of others. So I masturbate a lot more. I never used to masturbate, honestly. Like, I was sexually active for maybe 5 years before I started consistently masturbating. And so I think this like self-pleasure component of ethical non-monogamy, like, my primary is myself. I'm my primary partner. And then I have lots of other lovers, but I always need to remember that at the end of the day, like, what's my capacity? I can check. I say no a lot more, like, still not that often. Again, a lot to learn, but I'm recognizing that I can't be as fully in love with everyone at the same time. My energy doesn't allow for that. And so, yeah, my dad always tells me one thing at a time when I told him about like my lifestyle and so on and so forth. And I was like, true, but like, I can do one thing and then the next day do something else. But I have learned to focus a little in terms of being present, and that starts with me.
Yeah. One thing I was curious about is you mentioned that you grew up in a very loving family, and do you mind sharing a little bit more about how you grew up? And because I feel like that probably shaped in how you went into everything in your late teens.
I think about this a lot, actually, because my parents are both in the performing arts and music industry, nonprofit, and like behind the scenes world as well. But we always had different artists and musicians coming through, living with us for a week to a couple months to, a year, who knows? And so the fact is that I'm used to a nuclear like home environment, always in flux. And I'm also used to many different kinds of people coming in. So I'm definitely a novelty seeker. I'm definitely someone who thrives in crowds. Like, I am an extrovert. And so I definitely attribute a lot of my childhood surrounded by people from all over the world to my love for people all over the world.
I mean, that's fantastic. Like, you having those experiences where it's not just every day the family sits around the table and eats dinner and you just have this tiny little pod with not much exposure until you hit college, right? And then, because I think that can be an issue, right? Everybody's got this little tiny worldview, and then they hit college and they're like, oh, like the world is a bigger place. At least
that can happen.
That can happen, right? Especially like, we grew up in a pretty small town and we didn't have a ton of that like exposure. And so it's very interesting.
Yeah, I really consider myself lucky for many reasons, obviously that being one. And something else that I realize is that I recognize that there are people who are integral to your life and you care about deeply that you see maybe once every 10 years. Like, I saw these relationships my parents had with their friends and colleagues that when they were together, they were very, very close, but then they might not see each other again, for a decade. And recognizing that these non-linear, consistent relationships are just as valuable and just as valid as well.
Well, and it sounds like they've been pretty supportive, or at least based on what you said earlier, like your dad saying like, hey, do one thing at a time, but like there's a level of support behind that in the way that you live and the way that you do relationships.
Yes, they trust that I will learn from my own mistakes, and they're happy to let me do so.
It's almost passive aggressive, but I'll take it. Right? Like, oh yeah, you'll learn. This isn't the way to do it.
Just a little bit.
Oh man.
Thinking back to your first year of college and dating someone and then going to that orgy, I would love it if you could talk a little bit about that those first couple experiences of what was that like and how, because I'm assuming you hadn't done that type of thing before.
Yeah, I had not. Let's see, where to start? Well, a little bit of just orgy context for those who are still thinking that it's a free-for-all, just, bacchanal. This first orgy I went to was on the smaller side. Towards the end of my organizer career, we had parties of upwards to 100 people, but this one was maybe like 20 in a basement of a house off campus, and there was a big ball pit, and on the balls were written little sexy, prompts for people to do once they were naked in the ball pit. But also there were people just hanging out, snacking, having a drink with their clothes on. And at our events, we had a consent rule that you had to ask someone before you touched them, even to hug or for a kiss or whatever. So every engagement was very intentional and very clear on what was happening. And I remember my partner and I started hooking up to get things going because he was an organizer and I was down. And at some point, the mattresses filled up with people, and I found myself, there were a bunch of mattresses on the floor. We're in a basement of a house, like not that luxurious of a first orgy. And the funniest part was that in this threesome, I found myself having, a lot of consent, a lot of slowly leading up to it. Kiss Me Through the Phone started playing. I don't know if you know this song.
I don't know that one.
I don't think
Okay, well, for any listeners out there having a good laugh, I was also having a good laugh. I was like, I can't believe I'm at an orgy and Kiss Me Through the Phone is playing and I'm having a threesome. It was just like a very surreal moment. It's like, it's a funny song. It's like, throws back to my Bay Area hyphy days. But I remember really enjoying that moment. And I guess there was a lot of insecurity still at just like being naked in front of a lot of people, having sex in front of other people, where none of these were things that I'd done before. But I guess I have a bit of an exhibitionist streak in me because I did enjoy it. And I did enjoy, not in a voyeuristic sense, but I did enjoy like seeing people have sex, because I didn't really watch porn I still don't. I mostly consume auditory porn, but I hadn't really seen that many other people have sex in my life either. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm doing it right. Like, this is what people are just bodies like interacting. Like, all right, cool. Like at one point, I think someone like did an Eiffel Tower just as a joke. And I was like, this is like, we're just having fun. We're playing with our bodies together. And it's construed as sexual and risque or whatever, but it's really just humans interacting. And we can stay on this subject for a sec, but this is making me think that I really want to talk about kink as well. And like the BDSM play parties that I have since started going to in the last couple years of my life, because those are actually not very sexualized. And a lot of the time it's just, let's say, people getting tied up or impact or whatever. And it's really just adult playtime. And so the fact is that like I recognized how natural of a gathering it could be to just be bodies having sex. And that realization, I was like, wow, this is what people do. There's no shame in what we do and how we procreate and how we love. And yeah.
Do you think that, just kind of linking the last two topics together a little bit, like, do you think that growing up the way you did and the love that you saw with other people, like, made it easier for you to see that when you got in that environment?
Definitely. I think about all the work I've had to put in to accept my own explorations, and I recognize that it must be exponentially harder for others because it wasn't easy, like I've said. I'm really grateful because I think I had a few like steps of a head start in terms of that aspect.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. Maybe I think a good example of that is, and I think you kind of glossed over it pretty quick, is that like you not only went to your first orgy, but you were the person who kicked it off. Like,
Yeah.
like that's like most people would be like, well, I went to my first orgy and I sat in the corner until like 10 minutes before it was over. And then like I took my shirt off. And you're like, no, I was the first one on the mattress with my partner and like we got her going. Like, I just think that's pretty awesome.
It's amazing.
Yeah, I guess I like doing things fully if I'm going to do them.
Yeah, I know that one. I know that playbook. Trust me.
But if I'm going to do it, just jump right in. Why not?
Yeah.
What's the point in tiptoeing?
Yeah. So you also said though that you then from that point you navigated through different relationship dynamics, triads, and various capacities of other non-monogamous dynamics. Do you maybe mind talking a little bit about like what that exploration looked like and why, or maybe how you came to be like, I've decided I'm my primary and I'm on this solo poly journey at the moment. Like, cause you, like you said, it was time and it was exploration and you went through a lot of those iterations in a couple year period.
Yeah. Well, of course, a lot of it's situational. Life happens. I had 2 relationships that were open that for different reasons, but essentially ended because they weren't ready to be in an open relationship because they had one of their partners wanted to be monogamous, or when COVID hit, we were long distance and then they started seeing someone else and it just like wasn't sustainable. And so I will say, of course, with great reward comes like great, what is the phrase? Threat of, I'm messing that up, but you know what I mean.
I was hoping you were gonna find it on your own.
I was like, I know.
Was it great risk comes great reward?
Yes.
There we go. I started backwards. And so I started with the rewards because while it can be really fulfilling to have multiple partners, like I said, everyone has multiple friends. Like we all have multiple people in our support system, but romantically, it's kind of just like whatever happens. Like right now, I'm seeing someone, and it's just it is what it is. Like there's no really definitions. And then I have like a partner back in the Bay that we both date other people, but we've been seeing each other consistently when I'm around for like 2 years now. So in some ways, it's a longer term relationship, but in many ways, it's a new relationship because we don't actually spend that much time together in person. So it's like I've been traveling and moving around a lot. And I think that's a big part of why this lifestyle works for me. Did I answer the question?
I don't know. It was a good point. Whatever. I don't know that it really matters.
About, like, the relationship structures. Yeah.
Well, I think maybe to build on that, like you said that you struggled early on with like seeing your partner with other people, and that I'm trying to think of the best way to ask this. Like that perhaps a lot of the time, or maybe in some cases, that like the issue with people exploring this isn't that they struggle with being able to love multiple people, but maybe they struggle with like the insecurity of knowing that the people they're with, that they're not that person's like primary focus. And like, that sort of sounded like what you talked about early on, and like how you've come around to like, I don't know if it's self-confidence or self-love, like not feeling like you have to have all of somebody's attention to be enough?
That is maybe the most recent tier of the pyramid I have reached. It takes a really long time to get there. For a long time, even once I was comfortable in open relationships and my partner is dating other people, I definitely wanted to be a priority. Like you said, I wanted to know that I was, I guess, coming first in terms of their energy or time. But the most important tool, I think, is to look internally again and say, what happens if I spend more time with someone else than this person who's my primary? Like, how can I rank how much I care about someone? Like, and at times there are going to be people that you want to spend time with and people that you don't. And it kind of came down to the points like, I want the people I care about to do what makes them happy. And if they want to spend time with me and I want to spend time with them, then we'll spend time together. And I'm not going to ask for someone's time that they don't want to give. And so I guess a lot of that's a relinquishing of control over the situation. You can't control someone else's feelings. You can't even control your own feelings as much as you can commit to things. You can commit to relationships and you could commit to trying to maintain them despite your feelings changing. You can commit to love and cherish them as a person in your life, regardless of the actual day-to-day interactions that you have. And so, yeah, I guess right now I'm okay with not being someone's priority because I'm my priority. I've taken over that mantle in my own life. And I know that I don't need to be someone else's priority. I was dating for a long stretch, like continuously kind of relationship, be it open or not, from 15 to like 22. And then I had a little bit of time to myself. And then in this past year with quarantine, I had a lot more time with myself. And I really think that that was integral in this latest development of like not needing to be someone's priority. So yeah, really, really recent. This is not something I would have said a year ago that I was comfortable with.
Yeah.
And in terms of difficulty, where would you put that on the difficulty scale? Just for people who are trying to do this.
Good question.
that are saying like, well,
Yeah.
I haven't done that. I guess I just have to go out and do that. Like, it's not a thing you do in a day.
I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's like a 20, right? It's not easy to decouple our belief that the type of relationship we have with a person determines like how they feel about us, how they express those feelings to us. And this is really why, again, it's so important to be on the same page, because a lot of people, as you know well, have different ways of showing love or different needs that are going to be met in different ways. And so I've noticed this with actually a lot of my platonic friends. Like sometimes I don't have enough time to give our friendship what they might be asking for. And that's really hard. And I really encourage friends to tell me that, like, hey, like, I want to talk to you more often, or, hey, I feel like I'm not being, I'm not being prioritized. And it's like, okay, I'm really glad you could explain that to me. That's not how I feel. I feel like you are, at the top of my list. I might think of you daily. We might not talk that often, but here's where I'm at. Let's see if we can reconcile what you want expressed and what I want to express, and how can we make sure we both are thriving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and like you said, they don't hear from you daily, but you're thinking of them daily, but they don't know that, right? They don't know where they stand with you.
Right.
And I think that's easy to translate into the relationship world too. Like, you don't know, I don't know Emma's thinking about me when she's sitting there. Like, you hope, but you don't know. And so like hearing those little like affirmations and things is really helpful.
Yeah. So it's like, how often do you want affirmation? Like, how often do you want to give affirmation? These things are really crucial, especially when you're thinking about not being someone's quote unquote priority, because you need to make sure your needs will still be met, even if, let's say, you have a partner that has another partner they live with.
Yeah, that's fascinating to think about, like finding that balance.
Yeah.
And figuring out what you need.
Right.
And learning yourself, that self-awareness.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I think I know a lot of people belittle unicorns, but I kind of love being a third into like a really solid relationship. It's because it's like, you guys are doing all the work. I'm just having fun. Like, your needs, like I date a lot of people who date other people, and it's like, I love knowing that everyone's needs are met and I don't have to do anything for you. Like, it's kind of awesome. like
I love that perspective. I mean, like it's works for you, right? Like you're like, oh, this is, yeah, like you're having.
But I would just argue the flip side of that is that really probably I'm projecting onto you, but that works for you because you are your primary. And I think you like coming into a relationship where you're expecting almost nothing from another couple other than like, let's have some rockin' sex tonight. And then I'll see you guys the next time you want to have some awesome sex. Like that you're meeting your own emotional needs allows you to be that unicorn without feeling the shitty side of the unicorn.
And not many people, I would assume, are in that place all the time.
And neither am I, of course.
Right, of course.
No, for sure.
Right.
For sure. But I think that's, that's the common, and maybe like being one yourself, like maybe talking about the unicorn dynamic, because I think that's what we hear a lot when the unicorn topic is a perennial issue on the show. And like, my personal perspective is like, if the person that's showing up as the third, as the unicorn, whether it's whoever the person is, it doesn't really matter the gender, like if they want to be there and they're getting what they need out of it, then there's no issues with the unicorn dynamic. But when people start to take advantage of a third person and start to cast them aside, and they don't care about this other person's needs, that's where the issue comes in. But
I'm gonna also jump back to when you said rockin' sex. For me, rockin' sex includes like aftercare and cuddles. Like my favorite part of sex is the cuddles after sex. You need the sex for the cuddles after sex, but the cuddles after sex sometimes, mostly, usually are the best, personally.
So for you, the sex isn't complete until a cuddle is had. Pretty
much, yeah. Wow, I've never heard it put like that. So like straight, like directly to me. And I agree.
So it's not the orgasm that signifies the finish of sex. It's the cuddle.
100%. Sometimes I only orgasm during the cuddles.
For real?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
It's like the emotional component is integral for me.
Yeah, totally.
Which is really fascinating, because somebody hearing that like you just want to show up for sex and be the unicorn, like I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah. I guess I have to be emotionally connected to someone to want to have sex with them. And even if the sex is, let's say, rough, kinky, etc., not necessarily sweet or gentle, like there is a level of, I hope, usually I try to have a level of respect and care as an undercurrent. And so you can't show up like for like a one night stand with a couple and then leave and not have had you can't do that unless there's already emotional fulfillment. Like you get to know them first, or dinner beforehand, or talking afterwards. Like that, I wanted to go back because like that's integral to my idea of like a rockin' night of sex too. So yeah, to be clear.
No, I think that's
all included.
Perfect, and I'm happy you did that, because you are getting those needs met, but you're also meeting a lot of your own.
Yeah. And
it sounds like when you show up for that, that's your level of expectation from these people, and you're not going to show up unless you know you can get that. Yeah. We're getting lots of nods and points.
Yeah, sorry, I keep forgetting.
I just wanted to let everybody know that I said it correctly.
I know this is kind of an impossible question to answer, but where do you see yourself going in the future?
Oof. This is such a fun question because I remember at one point, let's say like 2016, a friend asked me about it, and I was like, it was like the first time I ever considered like an open marriage. Like I was at that stage in my development. Like, remember, I was a baby. I was a very, very small baby at the beginning of all this, despite wherever I may be now. And I was like, oh my goodness, yeah. Why? I guess now that I recognize that this is possible, why would it ever stop? Right? It's like, but I had always projected myself like a partner that I, live with or now. I don't, well, there's some like exciting news that basically I have friends who are like also lovers who are having children with their lovers who have lovers. And it's like anything's like, I've talked about co-parenting with some of my best friends, like who I don't have romantic relationships with. I think about adoption a lot. This is not really relevant, but like even on my own, like would I have a partner or not? I don't know. Like I'm kind of open to, again, whatever may come. I have plenty of time before like long-term future, but short-term, I'm game to keep exploring new things. I dated a couple for a second this past year who wanted to like have a fidelitous triad, and I was like, man, I don't think that's for me. Even though you're like open, you're not really open outside of the three of you. I dated someone with like 3 kids, and I was like, actually, I'm not ready for that. Like I'm still progressing and like working through whatever happens, but yeah, I'm kind of open to anything and would love a community full of people who are on the same page as me to like grow together with and like have long, like nuclear, larger communities, I guess.
Yeah, I love it. And who knows, right? Like this is all you're projecting today we're recording this April 1st of 2021, that who knows what will happen, but it's fun to dream and think for all of us.
Well, and to reflect back on like what the last 5 years has brought in terms of change and growth.
Yeah. Building on that a little bit more, I know you mentioned that just somewhat recently you've been exploring your gender identity. Do you mind talking a little bit about that exploration?
I really appreciate that question and would love to. As I said, this last year was a lot of self-reflection and growth, mostly because I didn't have a primary partner. And I don't think it would have been possible otherwise for me to really, I guess, open up to myself, like have that much time focused inward. And for most of my life, I was like, in terms of like, let's start simple, pronouns, right? I was like, I don't really care about pronouns. Anything works. I'm me, whatever. And then I thought I knew who I was. And then I realized I didn't actually have as clear of an idea about who I was and how I wanted to present myself to the world, but also like in my own, I guess, embodied cognition vision of myself. Because there were things that were coming up that made me feel uncomfortable in terms of my own physical body, but also my own relationship to other bodies. And so this past year, again, you could attribute it to COVID in terms of like not getting out of the house very much, or really the world going to pieces even more so than it already was. I wasn't really feeling that sexually, like I wasn't feeling interested in sex either. And I kind of had this dissociation from my body, but in a way that I'd never experienced. And so I started actually doing like more somatic based therapy similar to like Hakomi method or anything, if you know anything like that. Okay. And basically therapy, but focused on like sensations in the body.
Yeah.
And I realized that I wanted to have the world acknowledge the multiplicity and this discomfort I felt at being seen and being projected upon as a quote unquote woman, as, you know, I wanted to, I haven't actually talked about this that much to people other than close friends. So this is a good exercise in realizing how to put into words what I felt.
And just like take your time as well. Like there's no.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And if it's something you don't want to talk about, then like we don't have to.
No. I just haven't. So I'm like, I don't have my snappy recordings. Okay. Trying to remember where I left off. I'm just going to start over again.
Yeah, you can start wherever.
Yeah. I started using they, them pronouns in a group of queer motorcyclists in the Bay. And then I realized that she, her, those words felt stifling. They felt suffocating. And that